the Windup Newsletter Baseball. This is the Athletics MLB newsletter. Sign up here to receive the Windup directly in your inbox. It's the day after the trade deadline. I'm Levi Weaver. Welcome to the Windup. Trade deadline. Biggest moves made yesterday. Let's start with the names you'll recognize.
Love watermelon but hate the sticky cutting mess? This compact 2-in-1 tool slices neat cubes and flips into a retractable fork for easy serving at parties, picnics, or home. Want to get the best verified deal and see full details? Visit grabdeal.us/3 right now.
I didn't forget about Tarek Skubal, who starts for the Dodgers tonight against the Cubs on TBS, but due to space constraints, we're limiting this to yesterday's deals. Adley Rutschman to the Red Sox. This was the biggest surprise, both that he was traded within the division and that Boston gave up 4 players, including catcher Carlos Narvaez and 21-year-old pitcher Anthony Aanson, ranked number 47 on Keith Law's latest top 70 prospects list, for a guy who is currently on the IL for the 3rd time this year. Even so, Rutschman has been worth more FWAR than all but 4 catchers this season. Trade grades. Luis Ariz to the Phillies. Bryce Harper's requested help came in the form of a defensive shakeup. Ariz is expected to play second base, moving Bryson Stott to third, Alec Boehm to first, and Harper back to right field. Philadelphia also picked up reliever Caleb Killian in the deal, and lefty reliever Brooks Raley in a separate deal with the Mets. Trade grades. Casey Mize and Robbie Ray to the Padres. What you thought general manager AJ, not with the Padres going 8-2 in their final 10 games before the deadline. Preller dug around a farm system that isn't even that great anymore and found enough leftover parts to bring in 2 of the better starters available. Trade grades for Mize and Ray. I'll get to Jose Soriano and Kevin Gausman in our next section. Other trades. Lars Nootbaar to the D-backs from the Cardinals. Taylor Ward to the Mariners from the Orioles. Victor Vodnik to the Marlins from the Rockies for Connor Norby and a prospect. Brenton Doyle to the White Sox from the Rockies. The folks at MLB Trade Rumors have a complete team-by-team list here. Also, Johnny Flores Jr. ranked the top 30 trades from this year's deadline. The rates and barrels crew broke down deadline day as it happened, with a runtime equal to The Godfather, Part III. Active. Boldest teams at the deadline is exhausting and chaotic for everyone in the industry, but a few teams went harder than others. Advertisement Chicago Cubs. With an IL littered with the debris of pitcher hopes and UCLs, Chicago got after it yesterday. They added Clay Holmes and Tyrone Taylor from the Mets, Braxton Garrett from the Marlins, Kevin Gausman from the Blue Jays, Ryan Zefferjon from the Angels. Yep, that'll do it. Rebuilding a pitching staff mid-season isn't cheap. See ya later Moises Ballesteros, Jefferson Rojas, and others. But the Cubs spent this winter building an honest-to-goodness contender. They're all in, and that meant replacing engine parts on the fly. Los Angels. Even if we're narrowing our critique to trade deadlines alone, the Angels' recent motto of, "Well, that may be your opinion," has been utterly dumbfounding. John Mozeliak just had the best day by an Angels front office member in about a decade, replenishing a barren farm system with 9 prospects after a handful of trades. The Angels sent Joe Adell to the Guardians, Zefferjon to the Cubs, Kirby Yates to the Pirates, Brent Suter to the Braves, Logan O'Hoppe, and Chase Silseth to the Rangers. Jose Soriano to the Blue Jays, Zefferjon got them Ballesteros' big bat, and Soriano brought maybe the best prospect to move at this deadline. SS Arjun Nimala, no. Toronto Blue Jays, with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. In the early years of a long contract, this was not a rebuild, it was a reload for the future. The Blue Jays sent Gausman to the Cubs, Jeff Hoffman to the Twins, Dalton Varsho to the Astros for Spencer Urquidy, Adam Macko to the Rangers for Josh Smith, and acquired Soriano from the Angels, Jameson Taillon for cash or a PTBNL. Yes, they lost Nimala. But they also picked up 4 prospects that MLB Pipeline now ranks in the Jays' top 25. Getting a head start on next year seems particularly smart, since a lockout, even one that doesn't run into March or April, could compact the offseason into a frenetic maelstrom. Honorable mentions. The Pirates added 3 more relievers: Luke Weaver, NYM, Lake Bakar, MIA, and Kirby Yates, LAA. It's hard to give the Mets too much credit, given the chasm between this year's expectations and the results, but they did successfully pivot, trading 7 big leaguers for a good prospect haul. Same for the Giants, who traded 6 members of the 26-man roster, including Heliot Ramos, to the Yankees. New York probably overpaid to fill a desperate need while it waits for its outfield stars to return from the IL. The Guardians snagged Nathaniel Lowe from Cincinnati and Adele from the Angels. They also surprised everyone by adding SP Foster Griffin from the Nats. Zach Meisel has the details. Boston was extremely busy. They picked up Eli White from Atlanta and shipped Marcelo Mayer to the Giants for reliever Eric Miller and a prospect. More, Tim Britton's ambition tiers are now complete, with all 30 teams ranked after their deadline moves. Passive, the moves not made while yesterday was frantic. Not everyone slammed on the gas pedal. Of the 60 players on our trade deadline big board, 40 were not traded, including names such as Mason Miller, C.J. Abrams, Hunter Goodman, and Ryan Jeffers. Beyond the individual names, there were a few teams I expected to do more. Milwaukee Brewers, Dustin May, Joe Romero, and Antonio Senzatela are fine additions, but after being mentioned so often in the Skubal sweepstakes, I expected Milwaukee to be more aggressive. Didn't we see this story last year, when it made marginal improvements at the deadline but was swept in the NLCS by the Dodgers? Manager Pat Murphy defended the team's restraint, but what's the goal here? To make the playoffs every year for another decade, or to win a World Series? At some point, don't you have to part with a couple of your top 20 prospects and really go for it? Reminder that the Brewers have Law's top-ranked farm system. Houston Astros, they got Dalton Varsho, who is a great defender, but I'm not convinced he's a difference maker at the plate. And to get him, they traded Spencer Urquidy, a starting pitcher. Didn't they need a starting pitcher? But even after vaulting into the division lead by going 9-1 leading up to the deadline, they couldn't find a price they liked. Texas Rangers. On the flip side of that, the Rangers lost their last 5 before the deadline, including being swept out of first place by the Astros. But aside from the O'Hop/Silseth trade and shipping Josh Smith to Toronto for Mako, they stood pat. In fairness, Jacob deGrom did invoke his no-trade clause, blocking a move to Atlanta. But did Corey Seager's injuries scare teams off his pristine postseason bona fides? It gets harder to move him now. He's 32 and gets his own full no-trade clause this winter when he earns 10 and 5 rights. Nathan Eovaldi is 36. Jock Pederson is 34 and a free agent after this year. With the dearth of right-handed bats, there were no takers on Jake Berger in his walk year. I don't get it. Tampa Bay Rays, they're listed 4th because if anyone can turn Freddie Peralta's season around, it's the Rays. But like Milwaukee, Tampa Bay has never won a World Series. The Yankees and Red Sox both made moves that showed urgency, though I do think the Yankees should also have ponied up for a catcher and reliever. If the goal is to be better than those two, and it should be, are Peralta and catcher Liam Hicks, for whom the Rays traded 3 prospects, enough? Cincinnati Reds. After all that, Tyler Stephenson, Eugenio Suarez, Hunter Green, Brady Singer, and everyone else not named Nathaniel Lowe or Caleb Ferguson remain in Cincinnati. Honorable mentions. The Braves needed starting pitching. They made a valiant effort for deGrom, but didn't pivot well after, ending up with only Tyler Mahle and reliever Brent Suter. I can't fault the Phillies too much, given the additions of a Reese and 2 relievers. They're only here because they needed a backhand starter. Will their inability to get one haunt them in October? More deadline? Check out our full list of trade grades. Handshakes and high fives. One of yesterday's biggest shockers wasn't a trade. The Yankees are sending Anthony Volpe to AAA and promoting top prospect George Lombard Jr. Guess that explains why he wasn't available to the Tigers for Skubal. Advertisement: the Nats didn't trade James Wood. They might still be without him for a while, after he left last night's game with an oblique issue. With Dalton Rushing joining Will Smith on the IL, the Dodgers reacquired catchers Ben Rortvedt and Hunter Fiducia in separate trades yesterday. They also added Kreese Bubic from the Royals and optioned Emmett Sheehan to Triple-A. Tigers' president of baseball operations, Scott Harris, spoke about what could be a career-defining deadline after he traded both Skubal and Mize. Most clicked in our last windup, the Tarek Skubal trade grades. Closed mailbox with raised flag love the windup? Check out the Athletics' other newsletters.